Psalm 18. I want to go back to verse 25 and pick it back up where we stopped last time. To the faithful, you show yourself faithful. To those with integrity, you show integrity. To the pure, you show yourself pure. But to the crooked, you show yourself shrewd. You rescue the humble, but you humiliate the proud. There's been, 50 years ago. I heard it was a kid at a church camp at El Porvenir Camp up in the Sangre de Cristas of New Mexico. And it was in a discussion in one of the daily studies. And he said, humiliation is the root of all humility. And I thought, I don't know that it is always, but boy, is it most of the time in my life. See, we always have a choice. Either we can humble ourselves, or God will just give us enough rope and we'll hang ourselves through humiliation. It just seems like, in my experience, certainly in my personal life, that's always the way it is. I can humble myself or he will humiliate me. And often, it's not like God pushes the humiliate button. He just lets me keep going. And in my pride, I'll do or say things that will humiliate me. So, what is humility? It's a little bit of a difficult thing to very well pin down, get your thumb on. The concept of humility is basically it's the opposite of pride. C.S. Lewis had the best definition I've ever heard or read. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. That works for me. You see, you don't have to think of yourself as this stupid, inadequate, sinful, unworthy person. That's not humility. Humility is where I just don't spend very much time thinking about me. Well, if I'm not thinking about me, then who am I thinking about? I want to suggest that to me it makes sense that I would spend more time thinking about God and more time thinking about others, and in specific, those others close to me. You could take this principle and go to the extreme with it, and the farther toward the extreme that we would go with that, the less valid the principle becomes. But the concept is what John the Baptist said about Jesus. I must decrease, he must increase. It's about importance. Self-importance stands against humility. One of the best definitions of pride that I know of is an inflated sense of self-importance. If I am humble, do I believe, well, I just don't matter? No, I don't think that. I think a humble person has what Paul talks about in the book of Romans as a sane estimate of themselves. I don't think too much of myself. I don't think too little of myself. Chuck Swindoll writes about some neighborhood boys that formed a club, and they had their most important rule for the club was nobody acts big, nobody acts little, everybody acts just right. It's kind of what humility is. David writes that God will rescue the humble. I like the idea of God as my rescuer. It's just that sometimes I don't like the idea of humility. That's probably just me. No, I think a lot of us have that. And just to be honest and realistic. Well, actually, humble people are very honest and realistic about their own abilities, their own availability, their who they are, what they can bring. See, I think sometimes, since I'm on a rant about humility, I think sometimes humble people they sometimes struggle with saying no, because kind of we've been taught this, that either by direct teaching or by inference, that if you're a humble person, you're just going to say yes to help anybody every time. I don't want to be mean about it, but that's not really humility. That's called negative enablement. That's called codependent enabler. So the humble say no, but they say it humbly. Okay. Then he goes on in verse 28. You light a lamp for me. We take light so for granted in our culture, in our world. I flip on the switch and the light comes on. My wife, one of her endearing characteristics is at night, if there is a lamp, it's supposed to be lit. And so we have this ritual of at bedtime, we have half a dozen lamps that have to be turned off. Well, that's no biggie. But see, in David's day, that's not how it worked. A lamp was, an oil lamp was your source of light once the sun went down. And in David's day, again, most of those lamps were fueled with olive oil. Now, olive oil was not like a huge expensive commodity, but it was an expense. And especially for a poor family, you didn't want to use very much of that oil because you had to replace it. For someone like David, you didn't have to worry about that. He had plenty of resources to draw from to buy more oil, to replenish the oil in the lamp. But see, here's the thing, though. Have you ever done anything by the light of an oil lamp? Not many lumens there. But when it's dark, even an olive oil lamp is going to give you light enough for the next step. That may be important. In our world, we have plenty of light. We get light enough for the next 15 or 20 steps. But if you're using an olive oil lamp, as he would have been, you get light for the next step. I don't like that very much. Just be honest with you. I want to see the next. I'm not even. Don't even show me the next half dozen. Show me the whole path. Okay? I don't like the uncertainty of one step lighted at a time. Well, I think for me, this goes back to my, I guess I would say my inflated urge to survive, my instinct to survive. And when that gets inflated, when it gets exaggerated, it almost, I think for me anyway, and I think this is true broadly as well, it shows itself in control. I can't control what I can't see. So I want to see more so I can control. Okay. Now here is the connection. Walking by faith calls for us to get light for the next step. Not very often more than the next step. Whew. I don't think, well, let me rephrase that. Children seem to have less of a problem with that, right? Have you ever talked to I'm not talking a 3 or 4 year old, I'm talking 5, 6, 7-year-old kid about faith? And okay, now you can't talk epistemology with a kid, right? So this is not a deeply philosophical conversation, but kids just believe, and they don't need a whole lot of advance vision. That they're going to go with now. Okay, there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. One has to do with the fact that 10 minutes in a 5-year-old's life is a much greater percentage than 10 minutes in a 7-year-old's life. Okay, so now is the time frame for a little kid. But see, there's an aspect of faith that when Jesus said he desires for us to have the faith of a child, he don't want us to be childish. But I wonder, maybe he's saying that we would have faith that knowing and seeing what we have now is enough. I think he reinforced that idea toward the end of Matthew chapter 6, where he said, don't worry about tomorrow. Don't fret about what you're going to eat and what you're going to wear, and don't worry about tomorrow. As if to say, today, deal with today. Does that mean if you have faith, you just don't plan? No, I think it means when you have faith, you plan, but you hold your plans loosely. One way to say that is write your plans in pencil, not in ink. Because none of us are so infallibly wise that we know what's out there and how to compensate and control. We don't have that. You light a lamp for me, one step at a time. You guide me. I want that to be true of me. I want that to be true of you. It won't happen accidentally. It happens when I relinquish and yield my intense desire to control the outcomes. Well, I wish I had a formula for how to do that every time. I don't. I'll see you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.